When you read a short story, you come out a little more aware and a little more in love with the world around you. What I want is to have the reader come out just 6% more awake to the world. George Saunders. Thank you for joining in. Another episode of Keep It Fictional from the Port Moody Public Library. I'm here today with my two book friends, Corinne and Fiona. And as Corinne said in the beginning, before we record, that it may be fitting that today we're going to do short stories, and we are a little short of people today. It's just the three of us, but that's okay. Now, it seems like maybe I'm going to try and make it a yearly Keep It Fictional tradition that I force my book friends to read a short story collection every summer, because I did that last year when I asked everybody to read an anthology. And this year, this episode, we are going to do short story collections by a single author. Now, I haven't been friends with short stories for a very long time. It's only been like a year, but we are in a pretty good relationship right now, I find. And I think it's because I figured out how to enjoy them. I have never understood them for the longest time. And I think I've said this before, it's very much like my relationship with coffee. Because when I first started coffee, people tell me that like, oh, well, you should try coffee. Go get a latte, go get a mocha, go get a cappuccino, go get these like fancy long names, things that has all this stuff on it. And I hated all of them because I'm like whatever Corinne is drinking right now. I'm like, what is that? What is this? Like, why would anyone drink this? And then it was only until I finally tried real coffee, which is just coffee, like pure coffee with nothing in it. Then that's when I realized, oh, that's why people love coffee, because this is what coffee is supposed to taste like. And that is very much like short stories because in the same thing, I was like, okay, I'm going to try to get into this format. And I was trying anthologies. And people tell me, oh, like there's a book, a collection of so many different ones. So try it. If you don't like one, it's okay. You can pick another one. And there was just too many flavors and my stomach just can't deal with it. I'm like, what is this? This is just too much. And I cannot switch from one to another. And the buffet just wasn't working for me. And it's only until I started reading this was what started it all, The Dangers of Smoking in Bed by Marianne and Enrique. I'm like, okay, let's see what this is. And that's when I realized short stories is actually something that I can actually deal with as long as it is a single author collection. Because for me, it feels like when I'm reading a novel, I'm trying to get to know the characters. I'm trying to get to know their hopes and dreams, and I want to see how they will deal with the world. And in a short story collection by one author, I am trying to get to know the author. I want to see their hopes and dreams. I get to know how they would deal with all different kinds of stories. And I find that because there's like multiple stories in it, and a good short story collection, the voice of the author always comes through so clearly throughout the entire collection. And I just feel like I get to know them a lot more. And that's probably why I decided that, like short stories is actually pretty great. So that's my little journey with short stories. And I'm going to ask my book friends now to see whether you have a relationship with short stories or not. And it's okay if you don't. And also how gives our listeners would like to get into short stories. Like that's my way of doing it, but I'm sure there are other ways of, like getting to know short stories. And I know I'm going to ask Fiona first, because I'm pretty sure they have a very different way of approaching short stories than me.
Yeah, definitely have a growing relationship with short stories. And I'm actually going to agree with you on a lot of those things, Virginia. I really appreciate the intro quote that you gave because I found a knockout short story collection that that is what it did for me. It challenged my imagination so much. And that's what I want from a book. And sometimes it can be a lot with a short story collection when you're like, wow, amazing. And then you get to the next thing and you're like, oh, I'm not ready to switch. But I guess this one had enough ones that were kind of like, fine, whatever, that then when a really good one came along, I was able to engage again and really appreciate it. So yeah, and also I think that because this is such a great author, it really worked because I am just really enjoying getting to know this author. So I read The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu, who is an incredible author, and I believe he is the creator of Silk Punk. So I went back and forth in this collection of like, oh man, I can't wait to read this author's other stuff. And then like, nope, never again, putting this down. I'm done. I'm done with you, Ken Liu. I think I came out the other side of very energized and excited about him, but he's definitely not without his faults. So this is also a huge story collection. Some of them are like full-on novellas in there, I swear. And then others are little tidbits. And it has like just a lot of stories in it. I don't know, like at least 12, maybe 15. So it's kind of gargantuan. We open with the bookmaking habits of select species. This is almost unintelligible, but in a really like beautiful way that challenged my imagination a lot. It's about all of these different species and like the way Liu writes, like I can't reverberate like any of this because it's just so select in the way that he talks about his subjects, and so creative. It's about all of these different species in the universe and their relationship to stories, and that's like the best description I can do. It's wild. It's so imaginative, which is interesting because he also has some very generic stories. He has this like one take on privacy and technology that was just whoa, like, oh, okay, maybe that would have been interesting 30 years ago. Like very didactic. But then when he hits his stride, so inventive, which is why it's interesting that he can also be generic. And he has this leans towards grittiness that is very like 1990s Marvel, and that is when I kind of zoned out a lot, or even occasionally skipped stories because they were just too gritty for the sake of being gritty. And he very much has this perspective of the world that men are bad, evil people, children are hope for the future, and bad things happen, but we need to kind of like maintain our like self pride essentially. And I feel like that is the thread throughout, and sometimes that's gritty and upsetting, and other times that's triumphant and amazing. And again, he just flip-flops between being very boring with these ideas and being so incredibly creative. So I would say that you can almost cherry pick in this short story collection if you would like, and it's almost better to go into it knowing more and kind of select what is going to be good for you, because this book also comes with every content warning you can think of. Sexual violence, violence against children, violence against animals, racist language, like just anything that's going to upset you is in this book. So, and some of that I was happy to skip, and others I felt was really used in a devastatingly amazing way. The title story, The Paper Menagerie, is about a young boy. His mother was a mail order bride, and his father is an American. And it's really about his relationship with his mother, who, as he grows older, he becomes continually more frustrated with her inability to fit into American culture. But she has this amazing gift. She can bring life to the paper creatures that she creates. So she makes him a beautiful tiger, um, and fish who he realizes can't live out of water, and then when they are put in water because they're paper, they dissolve. Um, so he has this beautiful paper menagerie built by his mom, and eventually puts it in a box to forget about, and comes back to it later in life as his mother is dying. Uh, it is such a beautiful reflection of, uh, of I think being multiracial in America, and the ways we fit and don't fit. And I sobbed. I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. Like, this made me cry more than maybe any story ever has. Just beautiful, but also respect if it's something that you don't want to put yourself through. Same thing with the Litromancer. Is about an I think it's let me think. Oh, Taiwan. About an expat American family in Taiwan. And again, it's told from this like young girl's perspective. She's very naive. She's open-minded, unlike her parents. And it's this sort of like archetype that he uses a lot. And she comes into contact with this older man and his grandson. And he uses litromancy, taking the characters from names to tell the future about them. And there's water buffalo in it, which I really enjoyed, and it was all really lovely. And this budding relationship, this intergenerational budding relationship, and then everything goes horribly wrong, horribly wrong. It was so upsetting. I put the book down for like 4 months and didn't touch it because I was so scarred from it. So that I would say, like, for me, the Paper Menagerie was worth feeling those feelings. I'm still not so sure about the Litromancer. Yeah, strong content warning for torture. There are also, so I think he does this amazing sci-fi at its absolute best, just like challenging your brain, so fascinating and interesting. There were quite a few of those stories that just went to places that I've never seen sci-fi go before. But then he also does like historical and mythological things, a lot of stories nested in stories. So those are the two things that I love, is mythology and like sci-fi, like people who are willing to really go there with those things to challenge your imagination. And so I got a lot out of this. All the Flavors, a much longer one, was one I really enjoyed. It honestly was like gritty Auntie Po. It's like it's the New Frontier. It's Chinese American gold panners in Idaho. And again, we have this like naive, sweet young American girl who's developing this relationship with an older man, that's like a mentor relationship with this older Chinese man. And he tells her stories about Guan Yu, this great warrior who can never die. And yeah, it's just, I think, a wonderful reclaiming of the Chinese experience, American experience of the frontier. Um, and I haven't really talked that much about the sci-fi. Again, it's because I feel like I don't have the vocabulary to like reiterate it, but there was one, let me see, what was it called? The Regular, about a private detective in some sort of near future, and she is hunting a serial killer who targets um, sex workers. So like normally for me, that would be a no, like just pass. And I did almost pass in the beginning of the story, but then finished it. And ultimately it was a really cool exploration of some sci-fi ideas and a cool like character story as well. Like she's a little bit this like sort of, had a tough past and then she ultimately triumphs over it. But she is like, I would say Liu is kind of obsessed with the idea of the bionic woman. And so because she has had this really difficult past and lost her daughter, she has this implant that is commonly used by police and other workers like that, that basically regulates your emotions. It's called the Regulator, and you're supposed to kind of use it 2 hours a day to help you make non-emotionally driven decisions. But because she's had such a hard time, she keeps it on all the time, except for the 1 hour a day where she absolutely has to, so her brain doesn't turn to mush. And that's when all of these memories come flooding back and she has to deal with her emotions. So she takes on this case to find the serial killer who's killing sex workers. And it turns out he's hunting women for these eye implants that essentially take videos, so basically of their clientele, for security, but they're so undetectable. They're not legal. People don't really know about them except for this serial killer who wants to take them and use them for blackmail. So again, it's like, oh, I don't really care about like gritty cops and horrible murders. But this just integration of really cool ideas about the way humans could potentially augment themselves, and then weaving those in with thoughts about what makes us human. And his sci-fi is never just what if this. It's like, what if this, and what does that say about people and society? And they're just so deep, even in these short little stories. So The Waves was another great one, about space exploration and what happens when we go into space and then we just continue to develop and evolve. Like what happens, thousands and thousands and thousands of years from now, to those people in space. So yeah, just fascinating stuff that can be cherry picked. Absolutely. If you want to know what the story is about before, like, read up on it. I don't think it will ruin it, because mostly his like when there's a surprise in the story, it's really horrible and gritty, so you might want to know about it in advance. And because he's so like inventive, I don't think knowing what the story is about will ruin it in any way, because it's so much about his description. Yeah, just amazing. And I can't wait to read his fantasy sci-fi series. That is The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu. Highly recommended. I think there's something for everyone in there.
Thank you, Fiona. That sounds like a really interesting one. I can't quite tell how much you like it when you talk about it, but I can see that it varies a little bit, and there's definitely some really great, surprising stories there.
Definitely passionate. I don't know about but definitely passionate about it. Yeah.
That's great. And I will ask each person that, since there's only three of us, the essential question for today, Fiona, is: do you remember like a short story that you read in high school? Was there anything that made like an impression on you?
I'm going to cheat and steal one from university, because I don't remember reading any in high school. But one that really left an impression on me, I did my undergrad in anthropology, and we read this, it was called like the Nicereum or something like that. It's the word American backwards. And it was so it's this whole thing about like basically, you read through it about this society where they do all this crazy stuff, and then you get to the end and it's like, guess what? That's you. And it really made a big impression on me because, it was that time when you first start university and you're taking everything in and you're like, wow, I've never seen that before. I'm reflecting on myself. This is crazy. But it did really leave an impression on me and kind of like set the stage for my whole degree of thinking about anthropology of like, when we other societies where this is what it looks like to just describe something and not understand it. So that left a big impression on me.
Cool. All right. Well, I am going to go next because, we got a pretty speculative one from Fiona, today. And I think I might be the one who has like a regular, if that's the word, non-weird collection, which is just bizarre. But this is the collection, the third short story collection that I read last year that sort of cemented that relationship. I'm like, yes, let's start this lifelong relationship. And as I said, it is just definitely not as weird as all the other collections that is going to be talked about today. This is a debut collection by author Lesley Nneka Arimah, and it is called What It Means When a Man Falls from a Sky. And I believe I read this last year for a readathon, I think, for our readathon here. But anyway, one of the quotes I found when I was looking up sort of quotes for short story is from Edgar Allan Poe, who said basically that a short story must have a single mood and every sentence must build towards it. And I would extend it to say a short story collection really should have a single mood and every story should also build towards it. And so starting with our first story in this book, it really sets the mood of what this collection is going to be about in just 8 pages. The story is called The Future Looks Good. And we begin with Asima, who's fumbling with her keys, trying to unlock the door. And because of that, she didn't see what came behind her. First, it was her father when he was a little boy. When he was a little boy who was trying to get his stepmother's attention and affection, but his stepmother just refuses to love him. They dance around each other, boy waltzing forward with wands, woman pirouetting away. The sentences in this book is so good. Anyway, she didn't see her mother coming behind her. Her mother who came from a family of privilege, but lost it all because they belonged to the wrong side of the civil war in Nigeria. She didn't see her sister, Bibi, coming behind her. Asima grows up yearning for her sister's affection, but there is none to give because Bibi never shares. Bibi, who is beautiful, who is stubborn, just like her mother. And the mother and daughter, they fight all the time ever since Bibi was in the womb. So of course, Bibi won't listen to her mother when she tells her that, no, the man that you're going to run away with is no good for you. And that is how Asima ends up here, carrying all that behind her, fumbling with a pair of keys and trying to unlock a door. And she didn't see what came behind her. And the story ends with probably one of the 2 best last line in this collection that is going to knock you out. So you're going to be staying down there and it's going to take a while before you can get back up in just 8 pages. And that is what all these stories are like in this collection. They are a knockout. And the first story really kind of tells us the kinds of story that is in this collection. And they explore mostly very complicated familial relationships between parent and child, especially between mother and daughter, between siblings, between cousins, between more and more relatives. And layer on top of that, and what often makes these relationships so antagonistic is what the ideas that each girl, each woman have. The idea that like, what do I need to do? How should I behave in order to survive, in order to be allowed to live? And these conflicting ideas of what a girl who hasn't really know the world thinks she should do versus a mother who has already been through it. In the story called Lights, we have a father and a belly who feels like he's living the life of a single father, taking care of his daughter while his wife went to study in the States. And he could just see the relationship between the mother and the daughter growing apart every single time they talk on the phone. His wife, a mother who is just trying to prepare her 14-year-old for the world. She'll say to her daughter, "Stop laughing so loud, dear." Or, "How is it that I can hear you chewing all the way here in America? What do you mean daddy made you breakfast? You're old enough to be cooking." And she's just trying to make sure her daughter knows how to stay alive. But Annabelle is also trying to keep her daughter alive, keep her daughter's light alive, because he did not realize that the world will so easily snuff out any light that a daughter has, that she would be returned to him hollow out, relief of her better parts. And Annabelle just want her daughter to know that it is okay to yell in your face every time she wins a game against her father. He just want to see her keeping that spark, keeping that fire in her forever and ever. In Buchi's Girl, Buchi is a widow whose husband died in an accident, and she has to move in with her sister and her brother-in-law so that she has the means to raise her two daughters. One of her daughters hasn't spoken because she witnessed the accident, and the other, who has turned from a heart diamond to dust, eager to please, totally at the beck and call of her aunt and uncle because she understands that they could be kicked out at any moment. Even though she's the sister, she cleans, she cooks, she runs errands just like all the other servants in the house. And she watches her brother-in-law Dixon set in that sprawl way of his, unself-conscious, completely believing in his right to take up space. What is a mother to do if there's no other way to provide for your children? You keep your mouth shut. That's what she does. In Glory, we have our main character, Glory be to God. That's her full name, but everybody call her Glory, and you can see why, except her grandfather, who called her that girl. Because one look at her when she was a baby, he said, that girl has something rotten in her. And maybe that is true because she's almost 30, but she seems like she's never made a right decision. She's always attracted to the wrong side. She's always attracted to doing the wrong thing. And it seems like she's just followed by chronic bad luck. But maybe her luck has changed because she met a man in the call center that she works in. And it turns out that this new colleague is not one of the grunts, but he's actually a manager, and he has came down to see what real frontline is like. So he has tried to work some frontline experience. And somehow he has taken a liking to her. And he's talking about the we, the us, that future that is a we and an us. And she knows that she just has to believe in it. She knows that she just, this is the right thing to do, that she just have to invest herself in this we and us future. But she realized this planning this we and us future has nothing to do with her. Everything is already planned out for her. And so she's wondering, is it okay? It's okay, right? I mean, this is the right thing to do. I should just follow this plan that has been handed to her. Who wouldn't? Like, it's like this great luck for her. But can she really do that? And maybe in the kind of the other story that has probably the most devastating story in the collection, with the other sort of the most appropriate last line for the book, is a story called Windfalls. This is a story told in a second person point of view, and it's about a mother and daughter, and you are sort of the daughter, and they are a pair of con artists. They are basically, they earn a living by faking falls and getting settlements out of a store, out of a company. And she has been trained, or I should say, you have been trained when you were young to know how to fall, to know how to cry, to know how to fake an injury. And that's, when you are it depends on like the owner of the store, depends on the age, depending on the gender. Sometimes the mother has to do the talking, sometimes the daughter has to do it. And they have sort of worked out this scheme, and they run from town to town in order to evade like arrests, basically, and try to continue the scheme that they're doing, this big falling scheme. But something has to change because you got pregnant, and you have to figure, and you said to your mother, we need to settle down, we need to do something. And your mother snap at you and say, you don't think I know that? Like, are you saying that I'm a bad mother? And with that silence, and then the story leads to kind of an inevitable ending, which is just devastating. But that one last line, which I hope you will pick up this collection and discover for yourself, is just like Fiona talked about sobbing throughout her story. I was too stunned to sob. It was so gut wrenching. It is, and that I feel like it's like all the stories in this collection, they are all kind of like that, and they all have that. So you watch these women, you watch these girls have their lives sucked out of them, as you feel like your life is getting sort of sucked out also by these stories. Lesley Nneka Arimah has such a good command of language. Like, all her sentences are so simple, but they are deceptively simple. There's no wasted word in her story. Everything just fits, and they are so beautiful, and they are just fantastic. And I have like, you just want to read the stories over and over again, and they are just that good. And I have to say, like, yeah, most of the stories, like I said, this is a pretty grounded collection. There are a couple that is kind of maybe a little bit more magical realism in it, like in the title story, for example, What It Means When a Man Falls from the Sky. Is sort of set in a post-apocalyptic world where a lot of continents have disappeared because of climate change, and so a lot of people are being displaced, a lot of people become refugees. But that's okay, because the mathematicians have figured out this infinite formula. They have discovered this grand infinite formula, and every little bits of it, if you know how to interpret it, you can use it to your advantage. And the main character, Naomi, has figured out how to take a little bit of it in order to take away people's emotions. And she especially specialized in taking away people's grief. And there's a lot of that around. But of course, like everything else, only the rich, only the wealthy can afford her service, can afford to have that, versus her ex-girlfriend, Keone, who exclusively works with refugees to try to take that away. But one day, a man falls from the sky, a man who believes he has rightfully interpreted this formula to be able to defy gravity and takes flight, a man who has been flying around, but one day he fell, and everybody starts to wonder, like, is there a problem with this formula? And what happens to all those people who uses it to try to do other things? Is it wrong? Is there something wrong with this? Yeah, but most of the stories very, very grounded, and I love this book so much. Be prepared to just get punch like with every single story. It is that kind of book. It's devastating. It's really hard to read, but yet it is also kind of like a good collection, a good novel, a good story. Like Fiona said, it really makes you think about what it means to be a human. And in this case, it's set sort of against sort of the background with in Nigeria. So you also get sort of that past of the Nigerian history hanging over all the stories and hanging over all the characters in this book. I love it a lot, and I hope you will give it a chance. This is What It Means When a Man Falls from the Sky by Lesley Nneka Arimah.
So you're a fan now, Virginia, but what was the short story that made an impact on you when you were in high school?
I don't remember to be honest. The only one that I remember reading, because I hasn't been a fan for that long, right? The only one that I remember was The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. And I'm pretty sure when I read it, I probably don't understand it. My English was awful at that point. Like, what was I reading? I have no idea. But, I did not realize that like she's such a giant in the genre. But yeah, so I think that was sort of the only story that I kind of remember, The Lottery. So yeah. All right. Well, from a very like from a science fiction to something a little more realistic, I guess. And then we're gonna head over to Corinne, who I feel like maybe decided that banana pants is a good thing.
Yes, the role of Virginia in this episode will be being played by Corinne. Yeah, so at the beginning of the episode, you had mentioned the anthology episode that we did, which caused me more strife than any other episode of this podcast. And we're almost at how many episodes are we at, Virginia?
90-ish.
90-ish. Of the 90-ish episodes that we have been doing, that one caused me the most grief because short stories and I are not friends. Again, as people were characterizing their relationships with it, mine is more like an awkward acquaintance that I sometimes run into at like a restaurant or at the farmer's market, and like, oh, what are you up to? And they're like, oh, collecting old baby teeth and making a mosaic of them in my bathroom. And you're like, oh, cool. See you around. That is how I feel about short stories. They're doing something interesting and some people appreciate it, but it's just not for me. And I probably did not help myself by, again, not really thinking about what choice I had to make, just blindly going into the catalog, typing in short stories, sorting it by which was the newest, and picking the book that was at the top of the list that was in the library. And I knew that this boded pretty poorly for me when I had the book at my desk and Virginia went by and went, oh. And then to add to my apprehension of this, Mark also came by and looked at that book and went, oh, you're going to read that one? You're going to read that book? And I did. And Virginia did warn me. She's like, oh, well, let me know what you think about that first couple, that first story there. I'm really interested to know what you think. Yeah, just a heads up. Like, it's a little weird. And I was like, oh. If Virginia thinks it's weird, if this collection was too much for Mark, I don't think it's going to be for me. And yet, I didn't hate it. I have some questions for the author vis-a-vis what happened to you in your life that made you write this. And with that tagline in mind, the short story collection that I chose was Cursed Bunny, which has a deceptively kind of cute cover. It is by the South Korean author Jung Bora, and it is her collection of 10 short stories that are translated from Korean into English by Anton Hur. It was actually shortlisted for the 2022 International Booker Prize. And this author, I would just love to sit down and just be like, tell me about you. Like, what's up? She is the daughter of two dentists, which I feel like weirdly has a lot to do with how she turned out. And she kind of makes her career writing, but then also translating books in Russian and Polish into Korean. So she is herself a translator and a writer and a very unique mind. So again, this is a collection of 10 stories, all of them equally as disturbing in their own way. This is not like a cool beach read. Let me be very clear. This is not a cool beach read. I don't even know what is the appropriate venue to be reading these short stories. Maybe the dentist? Maybe because you're already anticipating that bad things are going to happen. So when the bad things happen in these stories, you're like, oh, that's not too bad. It has been described as a collection of genre bending, magical realism and sci-fi and horror. It kind of goes through, again, the horrors of capitalism and the patriarchy in a very unique way. If you enjoy being disturbed, let me recommend the very first story in the collection, which kind of sets you up for the tone, which if you're feeling queasy, don't listen to this. So a woman goes to the washroom, and then out of the toilet pops up a toilet baby that is slowly being made out of all of the things that she puts in the toilet. She puts in the toilet, and the baby wants more. It wants more stuff put in the toilet, and it calls her mother because it's made out of her. And as the story said, it's just a baby from different bits of her. Yeah. And she doesn't care for that. And the story is called The Head because the baby starts with the head and then slowly starts accumulating more bits. This won the 1998 Yosei Literature Prize. Oh, and we're just getting started on this roller coaster of fun. The second story is, if not worse, more disturbing. Oh, Virginia, don't give me that look. It was so much worse, about a woman who is having trouble with her period and so takes birth control, but she takes birth control too long. And if you take birth control for too long, then you'll get pregnant. But the baby is not fully formed because you need a man to help you with that. So she has to find a man to marry her and make the baby a real baby. But she's having a real problem with that because it's hard to explain of, yes, I'm pregnant, but not really with a real baby. So I need you to make it a real baby. And no, it's not from some other person. I just took birth control for too long. Oh God, I'm not doing this very well. This story is called The Embodiment. It ends horrifically. Very, very terrible. And then there's the titular story of The Cursed Bunny. And this happened because a very famous literary magazine in Korea called The Mirror was doing an Asian zodiac inspired anthology, and all the good animals were taken. So she was left with the bunny, which is cute and fluffy and lovely. And so she took that and did something very bad with it. Very bad. About a cursed bunny lamp that wreaks revenge on one family for putting their alcohol business into bankruptcy. And so it slowly eats people's brains. Okay. Yeah. Oh, none of them more disturbing, I would argue, than The Snare, which is about, well, what do you want? Do you want parents harming their children? Do you want incest? Do you want ghosts? Do you want horrific things happening? Well, by goodness, this story has everything for you. Well, so those are kind of the highlights of the collection. They do again, to paraphrase Stefan, this book has everything, every horror imaginable. There are some sci-fi ones about what if androids are there to kill you. Of course, they're here to kill you. They're androids. There are ghost stories, which I actually really enjoyed. I thought the ghost stories were actually splendid and had some kind of reveals at the end that I gasped at. There are some that kind of play into more like mythology or a fantasy or a fairy tale, but not like a good fairy tale, like a bad fairy tale, and yeah, it's some of them that kind of read like, what if Gladiator had a giant cow monster in it? Like, who would go there? Oh. So to wrap all this up as best I can, if you are looking for, again, as Virginia rightly said, a book that challenges you, then this is a book that is going to challenge you. If you are looking for some very straightforward short stories about not body horror, then this is not a collection for you. However, even though I'm doing a terrible job explaining what these stories are about, I honestly really enjoyed it. It's not my thing. And again, as Virginia said, it's banana pants. It is genuinely unhinged stuff. But it is so well done and so well written. And at the end of it, you just kind of like sit with it. You sit with some of the imagery, you sit with some of the writing, you sit with some of like the themes or the questions that she's asking through the stories. And I genuinely think that like some of these stories, for better or for worse, are going to stick with me for the rest of my life. Like some of the characters in this book, I will be haunted by them. I will be haunted by them forever. And again, like if you can get through just like, how to say this, the content of the first two stories plus the snare, that one was really disturbing. I think you'll really enjoy it. But as I said, do not be deceived by the cute bunny on the front. Do not think because this is a cute, like pink little bunny with like a cute purple cover and it looks like a fun little paperback, that that's what you're going to get. Because that ain't it. That is not it. But if you can get over that, you are going to find a very singular mind operating at the top of their game.
Very good job describing that collection. And kudos to you for reading it and sticking with it. I know you like to finish book, but I was not 100% sure that you were going to make it through. But you're absolutely right. It's as weird and horrific. Many of them are. You just can't look away. There's something very mesmerizing that you just want to know what is going on.
You really do. Like, oh, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm getting there. Oh, I see what you're doing here. Ah, okay. Thank you. Yeah, but I know you read this, Virginia. And I could see why you would really like this.
The first story just sold me on it. I'm like, I need to read this now. And I read it in one sitting because they were all just like, what else do you have for me?
Oh yeah,
What else
she's always gonna zag.
Yeah, right. And she does not disappoint. I'm like, oh yeah, you have more. You have more.
Oh yeah, just when you think she's reached because again, the first story is a lot to take in, and I thought, oh, that's as crazy as this is gonna get. And, oh no. Nope. No. There's so much more to go. There's so much more to go.
Yeah. But it's also like you said, I think like there's this commentary on society that is hidden beneath the very weirdness of the story, which I find
Yeah, no,
Very
she's wielding
interesting.
that weirdness like a knife. Like very, or I would say almost like a scalpel to very precisely like peel away the layer of what she wants to say. She is a self-described like social activist, and I can see it in this writing
Mm.
because all of these stories, as weird as they are, once you kind of get over the overlying narrative of what it is about, and you actually think about, okay, but what is she actually talking about? They're really incisive, and they're really sharp and cutting, and yeah, even the horrible story about the embodiment of trying to find a man to complete the second half of
Yes.
the impregnation. It was
Yeah.
just like, if you sit with it for a while, it's honestly one of the most devastating feminist
Mhm.
stories ever
Mhm.
written.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like the shove over Handmaid's Tale. Like this is yeah, she's really quite incredible, and I'm hoping that more of her stuff does
Mm.
get translated, because I'd be interested in reading a novel, although again, like short stories are not my thing, but I honestly think that she's so well suited to the format, as much as
Mhm.
it hurts me to say that, because
Well, thank you for reading short stories. That's amazing. And you can see now there are only two of us because it is a short story episode, I guess. People just disappeared. Or Fiona just be like, nah, no,
it was
no,
too weird.
thank you.
Too weird.
Yep, that's right. But I hope you would. There are many, many, many short story collections out there, many different types of short story collection out there. Hope you will all give it a try. And as David Sedaris said, a good short story will take me out of myself and then stuff me back in, outsized now, and uneasy with the fit. And I think all the short stories that all of us have read have done that to all of us. It's just now we kind of look at everything a little weird and it just doesn't, yeah. Anyway, so yes, please give short story a try. We got a lot more at the library, and come up to the desk and we will introduce you to weird and not weird short stories. We will find them for you. All right, so thank you again. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.